Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something foolish. We're going to wake up as a samurai in feudal Japan. Sounds powerful, right? Honorable, glorious, deadly in all the right ways. Except, you probably wouldn't last a day. So, before we begin, if you find these stories relaxing or interesting, you can like, subscribe, share the video, or leave a comment to support the channel. Every bit of encouragement gives me the motivation to keep making videos every single day. You're not dreaming when the hollow wooden drum pulls you awake. It's still pitch black outside, and the wind rattles the rice paper walls like the ghosts of ancestors you forgot to bow to last night. You barely slept again, but that doesn't matter. You're already behind. The morning watch started before you opened your eyes. You rise from your mat. It's thin and brittle at the edges, softened only by years of weight and sweat. You pull back the single blanket that barely keeps the cold from crawling up your spine. There is no fire left in the brazier. You wonder if you forgot to stoke it, or if the charcoal ration was simply too small. It doesn't matter. The day won't wait. Outside, the sky is somewhere between black and ink. Lanterns flicker from the main hall. You hear the shuffling of other feet, other warriors dragging themselves into existence before dawn. No one speaks. Speaking before the sun is considered poor discipline, or weakness, or something that someone said once, and now everyone believes. You dress fast but carefully. Undergarments first, then the tightly wrapped leggings, stiffened with binding. The kimono is plain, stained under the arms, but clean. You pull your armor piece by piece from its lacquered box. The metal-plated cuirass, shoulder guards that pinch slightly on the left, shin plates that never sit quite right. Everything smells faintly of old, sweat, rust, and damp cloth. There's mold on the inside of your helmet. You tell yourself it's just from the rainy season. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. As you fit the helmet to your head and fasten the chin strap, you catch your reflection in the polished steel of your katana scabbard. You look older than you did yesterday. Tired. Your eyes are swollen at the edges. You have dream lines across your cheek from sleeping on uneven straw. You blink. Once. Twice. That's enough. By the time you step into the courtyard, the frost has already found your toes through the split of your sandals. You keep your gaze low, but your back straight. You are a samurai, even if no one's looking. Especially if no one's looking. The others gather in formation. Rank matters here, more than blood, more than breath. You are fifth in line, which means you wait until 4 others bow before you can move. The first man bows to the shrine, to the ancestors, to the morning. The second bows to the first, the third to the second, you to the fourth. It's not fast, but it is sacred, or at least dangerous to skip. You hear cuffing dry sharp from the old man 2 places to your left. You remember that he took an arrow to the lung 20 winters ago. He still trains every day, or pretends to. No one has the heart to correct his stances anymore. After the final bow, you march, not into battle, into inspection. Your superior walks the line with an unreadable face, eyes scanning armor, posture, swords. You wonder if he slept in a bed. He looks like he did. His robes are pressed, and there's a shine on his boots. You resist the urge to adjust your belt. If he notices, he'll think you're nervous. If he doesn't, someone else will. The inspection ends with a grunt. That's a good sign. A grunt is better than silence. Silence means someone did something dishonorable, and someone might have to demonstrate their remorse, publicly, viscerally. You've seen it once. You still dream about the sound the short blade made. You're dismissed to drill. Not dismissed like free time dismissed, like commanded to keep moving or die slower. The drills are repetitive, brutal, and endless. Strike left, block, rotate, strike right. Again, again. You repeat the motions until your shoulder throbs and your grip begins to cramp. A man 2 ranks over drops his training sword. No one says anything, but he doesn't pick it up again. He just stands there, hands twitching. Tomorrow, he might not show up. No one will ask why. After drills comes cleaning. The courtyard is swept with woven straw brooms that leave more behind than they remove. You brush dirt over dirt, frost over frost. Your breath clouds in front of you. It's the only warm thing you've produced all morning. Someone makes tea. It's bitter. It burns your tongue but warms your chest. You sip once and hand the cup down the line. 5 men drink from the same cup. No one wipes it. There's no breakfast until your lord wakes. He rises late, like always, but today he emerges in a foul mood. His robes are creased. He yells at the stable boy. A bird chirped outside his window too early. He believes it's an omen. You bow when he passes. You don't make eye contact. He smells like plum wine and incense. He hasn't bathed in days. Neither have you. He asks for a demonstration. Sword forms. You are chosen to go first. It's not a compliment. It means if you fail, no one else has to. You step forward. Knees flexed. Grip firm. Eyes low. You begin the first coda flowing measured. Perfect. At least you hope so. The ground is uneven. You almost slip, but recover. When you finish, you hold your stance 2 seconds too long. He nods. You survive. The rest of the morning is training, cleaning, silence. You speak for words between waking and noon. 2 were apologies. By the time midday comes, your hands ache, your back screams, and your stomach has eaten itself twice. But you hold your posture. Because in this life, looking like you belong is more important than feeling like you survive. And tomorrow, the drum will beat again. The armor does not wait for your body to adjust. It simply rests upon your shoulders with the weight of iron, lacquer, and expectation. As you lift each piece from its wooden box, you recognize the familiar stiffness in your joints, the sting behind your knees, and the soreness of your lower back that never fully disappeared after last week's fall during mounted drill. Every strap resists you. The cords fight back. The chest plate feels heavier than it did yesterday, though you know it is not the armor that changed. It is you. You begin with the underlayer, a thin robe that once might have been soft. Now, after too many washings in cold water and too many days soaked with sweat, it clings to your skin with the affection of wet paper. You thread your arms through the sleeves slowly, careful not to catch your shoulder on the frayed seam. There was a time when you would have cared how you looked. Now you care how long you can move before the fabric begins to chafe again. The thigh guards fall rigid, clumsy things strapped with knots that never quite stay tied. They pinch. Always. The right one more than the left. You adjust it, as you always do, and tell yourself that maybe tomorrow it will sit better. It never does. The shin guards are no better. One is cracked, the other stained. You don't remember how either happened. There are too many days that blur together. As you fasten the breastplate across your chest, the inner edges scrape against your ribs. A bruise there from a wooden staff during last week's match still hasn't faded. The armor doesn't care. You breathe in, not fully, and test the range of your motion. It's limited. It always is. You bend slightly, just enough to be mobile, just enough to function. Nothing about it feels natural. Nothing about it is meant to. The helmet is last. It rests atop your head with the dignity of a shrine bell and the smell of a dead crow. The inner padding is damp again and carries the memory of yesterday's sweat. The chin strap scratches your neck, the knots stiff with salt. You try to retie them but give up halfway. It will hold. Or it won't. Either way, it's not your choice anymore. You step outside, and the morning air hits your face. Crisp, damp, a reminder that the season is changing. Even if your life isn't, the armor immediately begins to trap the warmth of your skin and the cold from the air, forming a clammy pocket between metal and muscle. You shift your weight and feel the sweat from your lower back beginning to gather. It's not even midday. The courtyard is already full. Men stand in ranks, stiff and quiet, each one equally miserable and pretending not to be. No one looks at one another. The sound of armor creaking, fabric stretching, and breath held just slightly too long fills the space like a distant drum. The smell is harder to ignore: rust, human salt, and the sour musk of old training gear. No incense today. No wind either. Just the heavy heat that lingers in places no one wants to speak about. Your instructor calls for movement drills. You begin to walk, then run, then stop. Pivot, bow draw sheath. Repeat. The armor protests at every step, grinding against your joints, biting into the backs of your knees, catching your breath mid. Sweat rolls down your spine and pools at your waist. You do not wipe it. You do not speak of it. A samurai does not complain about the armor. The armor is honor. Even if it stinks. A younger recruit slips during the fourth turn. His sandal catches, and he goes down with a sound like a dropped kettle. He scrambles back to his feet immediately, eyes wide, mouth shut. Blood drips from his chin. No one laughs. No one helps. The instructor says nothing. The drills continue. By the fifth cycle, your fingers are trembling from the effort of maintaining grip. You squeeze the hilt tighter and tell yourself this is strength, not desperation. Your wrists burn from the repeated motions. You rotate your shoulders slightly, stretching the muscles beneath the plates. The motion causes your chest guard to shift, scraping once again along the bruised spot. You inhale sharply but make no sound. That, too, is discipline. The brake bell sounds. It might be a kindness. It might be a trap. You loosen the strap beneath your helmet and raise the visor. The air that touches your face feels like relief, but smells like your neighbor's unwashed armor. You step back, kneel, and begin unfastening the pieces again carefully, in the same order as tradition dictates. Your thighs sigh in gratitude when the leg plates fall away. You wipe your brow with your sleeve. It's damp. Dirt sticks to your face. You ignore it. Cleanliness will come later, or not at all. You focus on the weight lifting from your body, the sudden freedom of movement, and the strange sense that, without the armor, you feel more naked than unburdened. You hang your pieces in the shade near the wall. They clank softly against the wooden frame. Someone's breastplate falls nearby. No one turns to look. You stretch your back until it pops. The sound is satisfying. The relief, temporary. You walk to the well. The water is cool, metal tasting, and faintly bitter. You splash some on your face, and the dust runs in streaks down your jaw. You drink from your cupped hands. It tastes better than the tea you'll get later. Someone coughs behind you, deep rattling. You glance briefly, but do not speak. He doesn't either. That's how it works. If it's serious, he'll disappear. If not, he'll drill again tomorrow. The instructor calls for reassembly. You turn back to your armor and feel the dread settle again, not fear, just fatigue in a new form. You begin strapping it on once more, limb by limb. The cloth sticks more than before. The leather is stiffer. Your own smell rises to meet you like an old friend you no longer respect. The helmet goes on last. It smells worse now. This is the second time today you've worn your soul. You've bowed so many times, your spine no longer questions the motion. It bends with practiced ease, like a door on a hinge that no longer squeaks but still groans under the weight of repetition. This morning alone, you bowed 12 times before breakfast. 6 two men who outrank you. For 2 objects representing men who are already dead. To 2 customs you no longer understand but dare not ignore. You start the next round of bows as the senior retainer enters the hall. He walks slowly, precisely, his hands tucked into his sleeves, his steps timed to the rhythm of his own importance. Everyone shifts as he approaches, bodies moving in sequence like a tide of nervous puppets. You lower yourself as he nears, pressing your forehead just above the edge of the tatami mat. You count in your head, 3 seconds, 4, 5. You do not rise until the rustle of fabric tells you he has passed. A man rose too soon last month and was reassigned to stable duty. He has not spoken since. After the bowing comes the waiting. You kneel in silence while trays are arranged for the mid-morning meal. It is not breakfast. Breakfast was the small handful of rice you ate in your room, alone. This is something else. A ceremony of presence. You are not expected to speak, only to exist in the right position, with the right posture, while others eat more loudly than necessary. Your lord enters. Everyone bows again. He waves lazily, half drunk on something sharp and sweet, though the sun has barely passed its peak. His robe is fine silk, embroidered with cranes and pine needles, but stained at the sleeves. He smells of plum wine and incense. He does not look at you, which is ideal. Being noticed by him is a gamble you rarely win. The meal begins. You do not eat. Not yet. You watch. That is your role today. To observe, to remain still, to demonstrate devotion through immobility. The tray before you holds a small portion of cold rice and pickled vegetables that smell more sour than usual. A fly lands on the edge of the lacquered wood. You do not swat it away. Movement could be misread. Everything can be misread. Your lord laughs at something no one else heard. His head tilts back, the sound too loud for the space. His retainers smile carefully. One coughs behind his sleeve. You do not react. Your knees are numb from kneeling. Your back itches beneath the layers of your robe and under. Your right leg is beginning to tingle. You endure. When the trays are cleared, your muscles scream to stretch, but you wait for the final bow. Only then do you move. And even then, your movements are deliberate. Precision is respect. Efficiency is discipline. Comfort is weakness. Back outside, the instructor calls for etiquette drills. This is not swordplay or combat. This is the art of social survival. You and 8 others form a line in the courtyard, weapons sheathed, hands at your sides. You practice walking, not running, not marching, just walking. 3 steps forward, pause, bow. Turn without showing the soles of your feet. Walk again. Bow deeper this time. Hold it longer. You rehearse how to kneel properly in front of an elder, how to receive a scroll without arrogance, how to serve tea without suggesting pride or fear. You practice silence, how to hold your breath when someone insults you indirectly, and how to look grateful when assigned a task meant to humble. The instructor watches like a hawk, too tired to scream. His cane taps occasionally, not as a threat, as punctuation. A man beside you misplaces his foot on a turn. The instructor says nothing, but he taps once. Sharp. The man corrects. He does not repeat the mistake. After etiquette comes calligraphy. You return to the inner hall and sit cross-legged before the low table. A sheet of rice paper waits before you, blank and expectant. The brush is thin, the ink already mixed. You dip the bristles gently, exhale, and begin to write. Not a letter, a poem. You do not write what you feel. You write what is proper. A reflection on morning mist over pine. A metaphor for loyalty expressed through snowflakes that fall and never question why. You keep your strokes even, your lines straight, your fingers cramp. You continue anyway. You finish with your signature. Just the given name. Titles are not for paper. You set the sheet aside to dry and bow to it. That is expected. You bow to the brush, too. That is not. But it feels safer. A bell signals the end of formal instruction. You return your brush, rinse your hands, and step outside into the pale light of late afternoon. The sky is overcast, the clouds thin and long like smudges of ash across a faded screen painting. You blink once. Not out of emotion, just dryness. Your superior approaches without sound. He is short, broad-shouldered, and smells faintly of sesame oil. He speaks without preamble. The Lord will be watching the sunset. He requests a poem. You bow. You do not ask for clarification. You do not ask for time. You walk back to the hall, retrieve a fresh sheet, and sit again. The poem must be short, respectful, beautiful, and above all, unrevealing. You write about fading light on still water, about loyalty that endures even as the world darkens, about a crane alone on a frozen lake. You do not mention hunger. You do not mention fear. The poem is delivered without your presence. You will not know if he liked it. You will only know if it is returned, torn in half. By evening, you are allowed to breathe again. Not rest. Just breathe. You return to the barracks. Remove your robes. Fold them precisely, and set them beside your armor. You sit on the mat. You roll your shoulders slowly. You do not sigh aloud. You look at your hands, still faintly stained with ink, and wonder if your poem will be remembered by anyone. You already know the answer. The sword you carry is not truly yours. You may polish it. You may bow to it. You may even die beside it. But ownership implies choice, and choice is not something you were given when it was handed to you. You remember the moment it was issued. A brief, solemn ceremony in the spring. The blossoms were falling in slow spirals, but you had no time to notice them. Your hands were shaking not from nerves, but from the weight of what was to come. The blade was wrapped in deep blue silk, the guard plain, the edge sealed. You were told to care for it as though it were your soul. You nodded, bowed, accepted the responsibility. The fear came later. Now, years on, you kneel before your sword every evening, not to worship, to inspect. You slide it carefully from its sheath and examine it under the fading lantern light. The edge is clean. The Hammond line shimmers, faintly a mark of craftsmanship passed from master to master. There's a faint scratch near the tip. You don't remember when it appeared. That bothers you more than the scratch itself. The cleaning cloth is folded in thirds, the oil already measured. You begin at the base, drawing the cloth down in slow, even strokes. Your fingers do not tremble. They have done this 1,000 times, perhaps more. You do not count. Numbers have no place in ritual. Only rhythm matters, only precision. The sword has not tasted blood, not real blood, not enemy blood. You have used it on straw, on bamboo, on the occasional pig carcass during training, but not in combat, not in the defense of honor, not in war. That is something you are reminded of often. A blade unused is a blade untested. A soul untested is a soul unworthy. You wrap the cloth and bow before replacing the sword in its lacquered sheath. The hilt faces left, always. You check the angle. You adjust it by a breath's width. Appearances matter, even when no one is watching. Your instructors told you long ago that the sword is not for killing, it is for preserving dignity. But the more time you spend with it, the more you suspect that the two are not so different. You have witnessed 2 executions. Both were performed with blades sharper than yours. Both men died kneeling. Both were silent. You wonder if you could be as silent. Tonight, the air is dry, the wind low. You walk the courtyard perimeter with your sword at your side. hand resting gently on the guard. This is not for readiness, it is for appearance. A samurai does not let his blade drift behind him like a peasant's tool. It must remain close, controlled, present. Your superior walks past. He nods slightly. You return the nod, 1 degree lower. The angle is important. Equal nods are presumptuous. Too low is desperation. You've memorized every rank's correct angle. You practice them in your sleep. Beyond the gate, a servant rushes by, head low, carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. He does not look up. He does not greet you. That is correct. You do not speak to him. He does not exist until spoken to. At the far wall, you pause. The moon is half full. The garden is quiet. Somewhere, a cricket sings. You allow yourself a breath. Just one. You draw the sword 3 inches. The sound is soft metal, whispering against lacquer. You pause. You push it back in. The gesture is nothing. A test. A rehearsal. You have done it countless times. The blade slides home with a satisfying click. You do not smile. You once read that the act of drawing a sword was, in itself, a vow. That a blade drawn must not return clean, unless the soul of the samurai is also clean. You have drawn your blade in private more times than you admit. Each time you ask yourself whether your soul is ready. Each time you answer, not yet. Later that night, as you kneel in your room, a boy arrives with a scroll. He bows low, hands trembling. You take the scroll, unroll it, read quickly. The words are simple. A guest is arriving tomorrow. You are to stand, watch at the entrance. Blade visible. Posture upright. That is all. You nod. The boy bows again and vanishes like a shadow that never formed fully. You do not question the assignment. Visibility is everything. Your presence with a sword says more than a dozen guards with spears. It suggests danger. Yes, but more than that, it promises control. You rise, stretch your legs, and prepare your uniform for tomorrow. You place the sword on the stand beside your mat. The blade gleams faintly in the lamplight. It looks patient. It looks silent. You'll lie on the mat and pull the thin blanket to your chest. Outside, the wind moves through the reeds like a blade through silk. The noise is constant, but not unpleasant. You close your eyes. The last thought before sleep is not of your family, not of your lord, not even of your duties. It is of the sword, and how heavy it would feel if you ever had to use it. The rice is always cold. No one expects it to be otherwise. Warm rice would imply care or intention, or even the luxury of time. But your rice is prepared in bulk, hours ahead of when you receive it, left to settle into the shape of the pot that made it, and scooped unceremoniously into your bowl with all the affection of sand poured into a bucket. You sit on the floor of the mess hall, knees tucked uncomfortably beneath you, back straight despite the soreness in your shoulders. The bowl in your hands radiates no warmth. You stir it gently with your chopsticks, more out of ritual than hope. Steam does not rise. It never does. Across from you, another samurai eats without looking up. His movements are slow, deliberate, not from discipline, but from exhaustion. His left eye is swollen nearly shut, the result of a sparring accident 3 days ago. No one asked how it happened. No one needs to. These injuries speak for themselves, and no one listens anyway. You take your first bite. The rice clumps on your tongue slightly sour, slightly dry, somehow both overcooked and undercooked in alternating grains. A single pickled radish slice sits beside the mound, its color dulled by time and exposure. You chew it carefully. The vinegar burns slightly. It is the strongest flavor you've had in a week. There is no conversation in the room. Words during meals are frowned upon, and beyond that, no one has anything worth saying. You sit among 20 other men, each of you armored in silence, separated by rituals stronger than steel. Only the occasional clink of bowls or the quiet scrape of feet shifting positions breaks the stillness. Someone coughs at the far end of the room. A harsh, barking sound. No one looks. No one offers tea. Illness is a personal matter until it becomes a public one. And then, it's not the cougher who's punished. It's whoever noticed. You finish the rice. You scrape the bottom of the bowl with quiet efficiency, chasing individual grains like they might offer a final spark of energy. Hunger never leaves. It merely dulls, like the ache in your shoulders or the tightness in your knees. You clean your bowl with a torn scrap of cloth and hand it to the kitchen assistant, a boy too young to be afraid of you yet. Your next task is cleaning the outer walkway. The planks are worn smooth from decades of footsteps. You take the straw broom and begin to sweep, pushing dust and dead leaves into small, controlled piles. The act is simple but exacting. You must not sweep too fast. You must not miss the corners. You must not leave behind a stray pebble that might offend the foot of a noble. The man sweeping next to you mutters a prayer under his breath. You do not respond. You do not even acknowledge him. Religion is tolerated, but not shared. Private faith is acceptable. Public devotion is dangerous. As you work, your stomach growls again. You ignore it. Hunger is not an excuse. You remember a time, early in your training, when you dropped your broom at task and knelt from dizziness. The instructor passed without looking at you. Later, you found a single yumi boshita, salted plum left beside your mat. No one claimed credit. You never fainted again. When the walkway is clean, you return the broom and bow to the tool shed. That part is not required. But it's become habit, and habits, once formed, are difficult to abandon. Especially in a world where the only things truly yours are the things no one notices. Lunch comes later. You don't know what time exactly. Meals are called by mood, not by clock. This time, it's miso soup and barley. The soup is mostly broth, with a few seaweed strands floating like ghosts. The barley is hard, undercooked, with bits that stick to your teeth. You chew slowly. You swallow without tasting. The act of eating is less about flavor and more about obedience. Afterward, you're assigned kitchen duty. The pot is enormous, iron blackened at the edges. It takes 3 men to lift and tilt. You scrape the burnt rice from the bottom with a wooden paddle, the smell acrid and smoky. The heat burns your forearms. You pull back once, then force yourself forward again. A senior watches from the doorway. His eyes scan the room, not with suspicion, but with detachment. You could collapse and he would report it with the same tone he uses to list rice inventory. That, too, is part of the system. When cleanup ends, you return to the barracks. Your hands smell of ash and stale water. You remove your outer robe and rinse your arms at the basin near the door. The water is cold. You use it anyway. Dirt is tolerated. Odor is tolerated. But sloppiness, never. You sit on your mat, back against the wall, and look out at the courtyard. The trees are bare now. Leaves lie scattered across the stone paths. One of the young ones will sweep them later. Maybe you, maybe not. No one knows until their name is spoken. Dinner, when it arrives, is no better. The same rice, the same vegetables, the same silence. You bow before and after, chew with discipline, and rise with knees that crack softly. You thank no one. No one thanks you. As night falls, you kneel before your sword again. Not for ceremony this time, just for comfort. Its presence is familiar, reliable, honest, in a way nothing else is. You place your hands flat on your thighs, bow slightly, and close your eyes. You are not full. You are not comfortable, but you are prepared. The bruises never go away completely. They fade, then return in new places, like migrating shadows beneath your skin. This morning, one blooms beneath your right shoulder blade, purple at the edges, yellow at the center. You touch it gently through your underlay before training, not out of pity, but to gauge how much you'll need to hide it. If you flinch during sparring, someone might notice. And if someone notices, you might be deemed unfit. And if you're deemed unfit, you'll be asked why. And there are no good answers. You wrap the joint with a tight band of cloth and say nothing. You stretch slowly, deliberately. The stiffness is worse today, but that's expected. Pain is routine. Pain is practice. Pain is what reminds you that you're still part of this place. The morning drills begin with silence. As always, 2 lines of samurai face each other in the yard, each one armed with a practice sword wrapped in cloth. You grip yours tightly, then slightly less tightly to firm, and you'll cramp by the 3rd rotation. Too loose and you'll lose skin. There is no perfect grip, only acceptable pain. Your partner today is older, broader, and faster than you remember. He doesn't speak, neither do you. There is no ceremony, just the bow, the pause, the sudden blur of motion as his sword comes down toward your left shoulder. You parry barely. The impact rings down your arm like a bell struck wrong. Your fingers go numb for a moment, then return in a tingle. You adjust your stance. He comes again, from the side. You pivot, he overreaches. You tap his shoulder. A point. You bow again. You both reset. The instructor circles in silence, watching not the outcomes but the form. Your spine must stay straight. Your feet must stay grounded. Your wrists must never overextend. One man is corrected sharply for exhaling too loudly. Another is dismissed entirely after failing to maintain balance during a backward step. No one helps him gather his sword. The 2nd round begins. You face a younger man, now nervous, thin eyes darting like a trapped bird. He swings fast but without weight. You block easily. The instructor frowns, not at you, at him. He is trying too hard. You understand. You remember. You exploit it. By the 3rd strike, his rhythm collapses. You'll land a clean blow across his chest. He steps back too far. His foot catches a root. He falls. There is no laughter. You offer your hand. He hesitates, then takes it. You pull him up with effort and bow once more. The instructor nods. It is not approval. It is merely permission to continue. You switch to forms after that solo routines. Each movement a test of muscle memory and mental focus. You draw, strike, return, to guard. Again, again. Your arms ache. Your legs tremble. Sweat trickles along your back, soaking the cloth that protects your armor from your skin. The sun climbs higher, offering no mercy. The only shade is the shadow of the wooden walls, and it belongs to no one. You begin to lose track of time. The motions blur. The names of the strikes fade into instinct. Your partner changes twice more. One is better than you, one worse. You bow to both with the same expression, a blank mask of effort and patience. After drills comes inspection. You line up in the courtyard, blades sheathed, hands folded. A senior walks the row. His eyes scan your face, your posture, your gear. When he reaches you, he stops. He notices the tension in your shoulder. He says nothing, just a glance, a breath held 1 second too long. Then he moves on. That is how warnings work here. You are dismissed without a word. That is how praise works. You return to the barracks and strip down. Your robe clings to your back, damp and heavy. You peel it off with care, noting a new bruise along your ribs. The cloth you used earlier has loosened, no longer helping. You rewrap it tighter this time. You do not wince. You take a damp cloth and wipe the dust from your sword's scabbard. It never saw a battle today. That's good. That's proper. A samurai draws only when necessary. Still, you wipe it as though it had tasted blood. A soft knock interrupts your rhythm. A younger recruit stands in the doorway, eyes downcast. Message, he mutters. You rise. He hands you a scroll and bows low. You return a shallower bow. The difference is slight, but precise. Rank is measured in degrees of humility. You unroll the scroll. It contains a single sentence. Tomorrow, you will demonstrate kata for the envoy. You read it twice, though once was enough. An envoy means someone important, someone watching, someone with opinions. You fold the scroll, place it beside your mat, and sit in stillness for a long while. That night, you sleep without dreams. Or if you dream, you do not remember. When you wake, the bruise beneath your shoulder blade has deepened to a blue-black hue. You press it once, hard. Then you rise. You do not stretch. You do not groan. You bow to the mat. You begin again. You ride alone beneath a sullen sky. The wind is neither warm nor cold, merely insistent, brushing past your face like the unseen hand of a restless spirit. Your destination is far, but your duty stretches farther. Today, the scroll tucked into your robe carries more than ink and folded paper. It carries your lord's intention, or perhaps his suspicion. You never know which matters more. You follow the narrow path that skirts the mountain ridge. Below you, mist coils in the valleys like forgotten thoughts. The road curves like a question, and you answer it with every hoofbeat. You have done this before, delivering messages that can't be spoken by anyone else. Messages that must arrive not only intact, but understood. And yet, each ride feels heavier than the last. No guards accompany you. That is the first signal. If the message were simple, a servant could have delivered it. But you are a samurai, and your presence is part of the letter even if you say nothing at all. The trees thin as you approach the outlying farmlands of Lord Kaneda's estate. Smoke rises from orderly chimneys. The rooftops glint with old rain. You pass a row of scarecrows so carefully dressed, they could almost pass for men who never sleep, never blink, never breathe. You nod to them as you pass. A habit, a superstition. A small offering to balance all the silence you carry. At the gate, the guards let you through without challenge. Your crest, worn but unmistakable, does all the talking. You ride through the first courtyard, dismount with practiced ease, and hand your reins to a boy who avoids your eyes. That, too, is familiar. They lead you not to a hall, but to an open garden. Lord Kaneda is there, seated beneath a blossomless tree. His robe is dark blue, edged in gold. The air smells of distant incense and freshly raked gravel. You kneel at a distance, remove the scroll from your sleeve, and place it gently on the flat stone before you. You remain back. The wind shifts slightly, lifting the edge of your sleeve. A single blossom, perhaps the last of the season, lands in your hair. You don't move. Time passes differently when you're waiting in the presence of a man who holds power over your fate. You do not count the seconds. You count your breaths. Each one a quiet, obedient act. Eventually, the scroll is taken. A figure, perhaps a steward, leaves with it. You are not addressed. You are not dismissed. You remain in place because obedience is its own form of communication. Long minutes later, the same scroll returns. Now nothing is said. It is placed back before you, and you bow again, deeper than before. You accept it with both hands. You rise slowly. Your legs ache from the stillness. You do not need to open it. You never do. The seal tells you everything. Red wax when a reply is mild. Black when the reply is meant to sting. This one is black. You ride home as dusk begins to spread across the mountains like spilled ink. The road feels longer on the return. A hawk circles above you once, then disappears into cloud. At a bend in the path, you pass an abandoned hermitage, where wind chimes still hang, tinkling without order. One of them is cracked, and its note is sharp off-key. The sound lingers long after you've passed, like a judgment. Back in your own domain, you deliver the sealed scroll to the steward. He takes it without question. No one asks what was written, or how it was received. The message was delivered. The body returned. That is considered success. You bathe alone that night in the small cedar tub behind the barracks. The water is barely warm, but it helps peel the stiffness from your limbs. You scrub until your skin flushes, until your knuckles sting, not out of shame, but necessity. The road clings to you in ways that dust alone cannot explain. Later, by the oil lamp in your quarters, you unroll a blank sheet of paper and pretend to write. Not a letter, not a report, just lines, marks. Nothing that will ever be sent. You think about the nature of your task. The transmission of power through gesture, silence, distance. You are not asked to interpret the message, but you must embody it. If your posture is too stiff, it signals insult. Too relaxed, it implies disrespect. The way you kneel, the way you bow, the number of seconds you wait before rising, all of it part of the sentence your lord never spoke aloud. It's said that during the Sengoku period, some lords trained their messengers not only in words, but in voice, teaching them to mimic the exact cadence and tone of the daimyo, so the listener would hear not the messenger, but the master. You believe it, you've seen it. Once, years ago, you watched a fellow samurai return from a mission with a voice no longer his own. You remember that voice now. You wonder if yours is still yours. They say a single poorly chosen syllable could cause a war. But more often, it's not what's said. It's how you look while saying it. Whether your fingers tremble when you bow, whether your eyes hold steady just long enough. The unspoken is always louder. You lie awake longer than usual that night. Not from fear, from uncertainty. The message you deliver today may return tomorrow with blood attached. You will carry that too. That is your place. Historians might wonder, years from now, whether messengers like you were honored as trusted agents or discarded when inconvenient. The truth, you suspect, is both. Revered and replaceable. Your armor polished in public. Your voice forgotten in private. You close your eyes. You drift to sleep with the shape of the scroll case still pressed against your ribs. You wake with the sunrise bleeding slowly through the paper screen, coloring your room in gentle hues of apricot and rust. The air is still enough to let you forget, for a breath or two, the quiet tensions of yesterday's mission. But duty is not a thing that fades with sleep. It waits outside your door, folded neatly in the silence, sharper than any blade you own. You dress without ceremony. Your robes are modest today, the color of storm-washed stone. No armor, no crest. That, too, is a message. You are not expected to fight today, but you are expected to be seen. The courtyard is damp with morning dew. The stone paths slick but clean. Servants move like shadows, never crossing your path. You walk toward the audience chamber with careful steps, your hands hidden within your sleeves. You carry nothing. You carry everything. Your lord does not speak when you enter. He sits atop the raised dais, legs folded, expression unreadable. The scroll you returned with now rests beside him, still sealed. Its wax glistens faintly in the light, like a wound not yet closed. You bow, low and long, and wait. Eventually, he nods. You rise and sit across from him, still beneath, still below. Hierarchy is not just social, it is spatial. You have learned that through repetition. He does not mention the contents of the scroll. He does not ask about the journey. Instead, he speaks of rice yields. of water levels, of village births and merchant debts. You listen, understanding that none of it is truly about grain or silver. It is about weight. It is about whether the balance is shifting. When he finishes, he dismisses you with a single phrase. You bow again. You leave as silently as you arrived. Outside, the sky has changed. Thicker clouds have begun to gather beyond the mountains, as if the weather, too, is waiting for an answer. You are not assigned another task today, but you do not rest. Instead, you retreat to the inner gardens, where the old pines lean forward like men trying to hear something buried in the wind. You sit beside the koi pond, watching the fish move in slow, deliberate circles, unbothered by politics or consequence. There is an art to remaining still, a discipline. You were taught it young, and you perfect it with age. Sometimes, in moments like this, you wonder if your purpose lies not in the blade or the bow, but in how quietly you can exist. Later, you practice calligraphy, not for record keeping, for rhythm. The stroke of brush against paper has a calming weight. Each kanji you draw is a breath controlled, a thought measured. You choose words that mean nothing together. Iron sky. Remember, but the act itself is steady. In the afternoon, a visitor arrives. You are not summoned to greet him, but you are aware. He is a minor official from a neighboring province, known for his intricate hair and unnecessarily long sleeves. He is received with politeness. You observe from a corridor as he's led inside. His face carries too many smiles. That's always a bad sign. By evening, the household is quieter than usual. Lanterns are lit early. Footsteps are fewer. Something unsaid stretches between the wooden beams and paper walls, like tension in a book. You return to your quarters and eat in solitude. Pickled radish, cold barley, a small portion of dried mackerel. It is simple, fair, but the salt anchors you. The bitterness keeps your mouth real. You chew slowly, as if each bite might be your last for a while. When night arrives, you do not sleep immediately. Instead, you clean your blade. Not because it is dirty, because it is yours. You sharpen the edge, oil the hilt, and run a cloth across the length with the same care you once gave your younger brother after he fell from a tree. You remember his face. You remember the way he cried without making a sound. You wonder where he is now, whether he would recognize the shape your life has taken. You leave the blade beside your mat, wrapped in cloth. A familiar comfort, a necessary readiness. As you lie down, you hear rain begin on the roof. Soft, persistent, like the tapping of distant questions. You close your eyes, knowing that in the morning, a new message will come. It always does. Not always on paper, sometimes in glances, sometimes in silence, but it comes. You are the one who carries it. You wake not to sound, but to stillness, the kind that clings to the morning air like damp linen. Even the sparrows hold their breath. You sit up slowly, spine stiff from sleep and anticipation, and notice the scroll waiting just inside your door. It is not sealed. That alone tells you everything. This message is not for delivery, it's for you. You lift it carefully, unfold it with the precision of someone who knows too well how paper can weigh more than steel. The handwriting is crisp, controlled. Not your lord's, but his steward's. A summons, not in words, but in intent. You are to visit the Eastern Watchpost. No reason given, none needed. You eat quickly, the rice too cold to notice. Your armor stays in its box today. You wear traveling robes, pale gray with a dark sash, non-threatening, neutral. You tighten it once, then again. Not out of anxiety, but ritual. Every layer a reminder of the line you walk. The eastern road is narrow and uneven, pressed between cliffs and bamboo. It was once a smuggler's path, before your lord reclaimed it, bricked over the worst parts, and posted sentries. You know the road well, too well. Each bend is an echo, each stone a memory. As you walk, a small lizard darts across your path and disappears beneath the leaves. You pause a moment, watching the point where it vanished. In another life, you think you could have been something like that, quick, quiet, free. But then, freedom is a story samurai aren't taught to believe in. The watchpost appears ahead, squat and square like a forgotten fortress. You are greeted with nods, not words. The guards know better than to ask why you've come. Instead, they open the gate and let you pass into the courtyard where nothing seems urgent, but everything feels unfinished. A pile of ashes smolders in the corner, a brazier recently extinguished. You step closer and catch the scent of burned lacquer. That's when you notice the fragments of splintered mask, a shredded banner, something that might have been a ceremonial sash. You don't ask questions. That's not your role. Inside, the captain of the post is waiting. He doesn't offer tea, doesn't rise, just gestures to a folded bundle on the table before him. You unwrap it slowly. Inside are 3 items: a dagger with a chipped hilt, a pouch of polished river stones, and a letter bearing no crest. All 3 belong to one mana courier who never returned. You know the meaning, not as a riddle, but as a verdict. There are whispers of unrest along the border. Merchants robbed, messages intercepted. Your lord suspects treachery, and now you are being sent not to deliver, but to observe, to trace the steps of a man who vanished like smoke, and perhaps to return with nothing but smoke of your own. You nod, fold the cloth again. No words exchanged. That's how it's meant to be. As you step outside, the sky has turned leaden. The clouds are heavier now, not with rain, but with waiting. You tighten your sash once more, adjust the position of your blade at your hip. The familiar weight grounds you. You descend the ridge on foot. Horses are too loud for what comes next. You pass by shrines swallowed by ivy, stone foxes with missing faces, and trees carved with names no one remembers. This is old land, land that has tasted blood long before you walked it. By midday you reach the site where the courier was last seen. A way station half collapsed, swallowed by reeds. You circle it slowly, eyes tracing the ground for signs others might miss. A broken reed bent the wrong way. A depression in the mud, shallow and square. The scent of oil where there should be only moss. You crouch, run your fingers along the earth. Someone burned something here, but not well. Beneath the ashes, you find a scrap of cloth, blue silk, stained. You keep it. 100 questions drift through your mind like leaves caught in water. Was he ambushed? Betrayed? Did he run? Was he found? Historians still debate whether samurai ever broke rank by choice or if every failure was blamed on ghosts and enemies. You've never met a ghost, but you've met many men capable of becoming one. You leave the station just as the wind changes. A crow calls from a distant tree, then falls silent. You follow a trail not marked by sin, but by absence. No animals. No sounds. The kind of silence that only fear can plant. As dusk thickens, you find shelter beneath an outcropping. You light no fire, eat no meal. You sit with the cloth in your hand and the weight of duty across your shoulders. You don't know yet what happened, but you know this much. Tomorrow, you will step deeper into the places others fear to go. Not because you're brave, because you were told to. And in this life, being told is reason enough. You wake before the light finds its way into the ravine. The air has turned colder, the kind that slips into your sleeves and settles in your bones without asking. Mist hangs low over the forest floor, thick as soup, making the trees look like pillars holding up a sky that doesn't want to be seen. You rise slowly, roll the cloth you used as a pillow, and tuck the stained blue silk deep into your satchel. It is evidence. It is the reason you're still walking. You continue east, where the road ceases to be a road and becomes little more than trampled grass and guesswork. Once, this path may have led to shrines or fish-in villages. Now, it leads into thickets that seem to breathe and close behind you. Branches tug at your sleeves. Roots twist under your feet. There are no birdsong here, only the occasional creak of bamboo, the sigh of the wind through cedar. Somewhere between the second and third hour of walking, you find it. A half-buried footprint, smaller than yours, set oddly askew. You crouch, examining its depth. Light, but recent. It doesn't belong to a bandit or a soldier. This was someone walking with caution, the kind of caution that says they were being watched or watching someone else. You follow it, not because it leads somewhere definite, but because following is what you do. Your feet trace arcs across old hunters' trails and forgotten logging routes. You pause now and then to listen not for movement, but for the absence of it. That's always more telling. It's easy to hear a twig snap. It's harder to notice when the crickets stop chirping. By mid-morning, you stumble upon a clearing where nature seems to hesitate. A ring of stones marks the edge of a former campsite. There are ashes here, but no wood. Just cinders that smell faintly of resin, and smoke and something bitter underneath. You sift the ashes with a stick. Pieces of bone, cracked and scorched. Not human, but close. A warning, perhaps. Or an experiment. Or just something left behind by someone who forgot how to cook. Near the ashes lies something more deliberate. A small wooden tag, partially burned, with one character remaining. It says, "Wait." You pocket it without comment. The woods here are old. Older than your clan. Older than paper. If the land is trying to speak, you've learned not to interrupt. You climb further east, where the trail thins into a slope of broken shale and dry moss. From the ridge, you spot a hut, low-roofed and sunken, half swallowed by ferns. Smoke curls from a narrow chimney. No cart outside, no animals tied up. It sits too quietly, like a secret that never meant to be found. You approach from the rear, careful not to step on the moss that might remember you. The door is closed. You knock one soft, but clear. No answer. Inside, the space is dark, cluttered. Scrolls lie open across the floor, pages curling with damp. A rusted kettle hangs cold over a pit of ashes. In one corner, a low table holds something you haven't seen in years. A collection of seal impressions, dozens of them, pressed into wax, each from a different clan. Some haven't existed in decades. Whoever lived here wasn't hiding. They were watching. You turn to leave, and that's when you notice the wall. It's marked with inclines and names and crests, in a web that connects provinces to battles to betrayals. At the center is one name circled in black. Your lord's. You feel the weight of breath. Leave. Your body before you even knew you were holding it. This is not just a hideout. It's a ledger. A confession. A map of politics buried beneath pleasantries. You don't touch anything. You leave as you came, quiet, alert, aware that you now carry something far heavier than a message. The descent is slow. Your thoughts no longer follow your steps. They scatter. If someone built that map, then they knew things your lord doesn't want known. And if the vanished courier passed this way, perhaps he saw it too. Historians still debate whether the shogunate's information network in the late Sengoku period was decentralized genius or accidental chaos. You've just seen enough to believe it was both. As you cross a narrow bridge, strung over a dry gorge, a thought slips into your mind like a draft. Maybe the courier wasn't silenced. Maybe he chose not to return. You reach the foot of the trail by nightfall. You rest by a stream and wash your hands, scrubbing at a stain that isn't there. You know you'll be asked what you found, but you don't yet know what answer you'll give. Some truths, once spoken, can't be folded back into silence. The night is thick with insects. You lie down beneath the stars, listening to their rhythm, soft, repetitive, like someone whispering old stories just out of reach. You close your eyes with the image of that ink-stained wall still hovering in your mind. And you sleep, not because you are safe, but because you are too tired to be anything else. You rise with a body that feels heavier than it should, not from exertion, but from the things you now know, the kind of knowledge that doesn't sit in your mind so much as it presses against your ribs and neck, like a second weightless armor. The stream beside you hums its quiet tune, as if trying to convince you that nothing has changed overnight, but something has. You just haven't decided what to do with it yet. Your journey back begins at a pace slower than usual, not because you hesitate, but because you're remembering each step, each clue, each object, as if replaying a pattern in a riddle you haven't solved. The burned wooden tag with the word wait, the blue silk scrap, torn and blood-specked, the wall covered in webs of names, and the empty kettle, still hanging, as if someone would return at any moment for one last cup of tea they never got to drink. The forest seems different now. The same paths you walked yesterday feel less like routes and more like corridors, less natural, more intentional. You pass the hollow stump where you first stopped to drink. This time, there's a stone balanced on its edge, freshly placed, slightly damp from dew. A sign, though you're unsure whether it's meant to guide or warn. You press forward anyway. It isn't long before you sense it. You're being watched. Not in the way you're always being watched in feudal Japan, where power observes through retainers, scribes, and polite smiles. No, this is the kind of watching that feels warm on the back of your neck. The kind that pauses when you pause, that fades when you turn, yet leaves behind a whisper of breath on the leaves. You don't speak. You don't reach for your blade. You simply keep walking. Whoever follows you knows the rules of distance. For now, when you reach the halfway shrine, an old stone structure overrun with weeds, you pause and offer the traditional bow, not out of reverence, out of rhythm. There is a comfort in rituals you don't believe in. You place a pebble on the offering tray, next to dozens already left by others. Travelers, messengers, fugitives. You are all the same. Once you step off the map, the journey continues without incident, until you hear it. A single clink. Metal on rock. You drop into a crouch instantly, body moving before thought. Your hand hovers over your blade, not drawing it, just ready. The noise doesn't repeat. You wait. The breeze doesn't change. A squirrel darts from underbrush. But it's not a squirrel that carries metal. You rise slowly, resume your path. You now know they want you to know they're there. At dusk, you reach the edge of your province. The border marker stands solemn in the clearing, a weathered stone with faint kanji, barely legible under years of rain. You cross it without hesitation. Home again, though you're not sure the word applies anymore. No one greets you. No one expected you today. That, at least, works in your favor. You return not to the barracks, but to the archives. You light a single oil lamp and close the door behind you. The room smells of parchment, dust, and faint ink, the scent of decisions made long ago. You begin to search. At first, you don't know what you're looking for. Then it becomes clear. You need to confirm that what you saw, the names, the connections, the shape of betrayal, wasn't imagined, that someone here knew. Or perhaps, that no one here did. You find nothing in the ledgers. But tucked inside a forgotten ledger of border agreements, you find a side scroll. Loose, misfiled, or hidden. It's a note, not signed, Just a message written in hastily pressed brushstrokes. Loyalty is a tool, not a virtue. Hide well what you cannot outrun. You stare at it for a long time. You don't take it. You don't destroy it. You leave it exactly where it is and walk out as if you were never there. The night outside feels too bright. The moon is high, full, exposed. You walk through shadows deliberately, choosing narrow alleys between storage sheds and drying racks. You pass a group of stable hands laughing around a bucket of water. Their joy is pure, short-lived, and oblivious. You envy them in a distant, quiet way. You return to your room, sit down, and unroll the blue scrap of silk once more. You smooth its frayed edge across your knee and wonder, did he find the truth and run? Or was he silenced before he could choose? Historians often write that samurai were bound by duty unto death, but they rarely ask what happened when duty and survival pointed in different directions. You now live in that split. You douse the lamp and lie down, scroll case beside you once again, and sleep comes slowly, not like a descent, but like a negotiation. You wake to a morning washed clean by mist. The air is pale and damp, curling softly around the veranda like something too delicate to touch. Everything is quiet, so quiet that the ordinary sounds of life in the estate feel like distant memories. You remain lying on the mat for a moment, your eyes tracing the lines of the ceiling beams, noting how a single cobweb has stretched overnight, catching nothing but morning light. When you sit up, your body does not resist. Fatigue is no longer physical. It lives somewhere else now, in a place behind the ribs. You move with purpose, but without urgency. There is nothing on today's docket. You were not summoned. You were not assigned. You were, it seems, forgotten. You visit the armory anyway, not to prepare for battle, but to maintain your equipment. The scabbard needs oil. The grip needs retightening. The blade, however, is perfect. It always is. Because you know what it means to rely on something without question, even when you no longer believe in its cause. Later, you make your way to the scriptorium, a quiet annex beside the storage halls, used mostly by apprentices and retired advisors. Here, you pass through rows of scrolls and brittle woodblock prints, eyes searching not for content, but for pattern. You've learned that truth hides not in grand proclamations, but in the small contradictions. You find one such contradiction in the estate's messenger ledger. A single line, dated 3 weeks ago, naming a courier you know by rep. Sentis, same as you. But no return logged. No explanation. No seal of confirmation. You read the name 3 times before closing the ledger and tucking it away. This is your answer, or at least the beginning of one. He made it as far as you did. Perhaps farther, or perhaps he, too, stood at the edge of knowledge and hesitated. You leave the scriptorium without speaking to the monks. That afternoon, as you walk the southern perimeter, a voice calls out from behind the storehouse, not directed at you, not loudly, but clear enough to notice. You don't respond. Instead, you circle the building and wait. Eventually, a boy appears no older than 12, in plain robes too large for him. He sees you, freezes, and holds out a bundle wrapped in old cloth. You don't speak. He offers it without explanation, and you accept it the same way. He bows and runs before you can ask anything. Inside the cloth is a message. A single piece of paper, slightly creased, ink smudged at the corner. Be careful. Eyes in places you think are blind. Trust paper less than silence. There's no signature, no crest, but the handwriting is precise. Familiar, you think. Perhaps you've seen it in the steward's annotations once or twice. You don't know if this is a warning, a test, or a trap. But you do know this. Someone else knows what you know, and they're still breathing. That night, you avoid your usual path to the quarters. Instead, you wander through the kitchen gardens. where the scents of scallions, wet earth, and drying herbs fill the air. It reminds you of seasons when life was simpler before silence was your primary weapon. You pluck a leaf of shiso, chew it, and let the bitterness distract you from the weight pressing against your sternum. You spend the rest of the evening writing in your private journal. Not a report, not a confession, just fragments. Words that no one will ever read. The act itself soothes something inside you, like setting a bone that never healed correctly. Outside, the wind picks up. The estate groans in places you've never noticed before. You think about the courier, again the one who never returned. You think about the messenger who memorized an entire letter, down to the pauses in breathing, just to impersonate a lord's voice. Some said it was loyalty, others said it was madness. Historians still debate whether those men were honored for their precision or pitied for their lack of identity. You understand now that the two might not be opposites. You close the journal and extinguish the lamp. Sleep comes this time not as an escape, but as a postponement. You wake with stiffness in your shoulders and the distinct sense that someone somewhere has already decided something on your behalf. The sky outside is overcast, a dull gray canvas hanging just above the rooftops of the estate. You sense movement subtle but layered. Not the usual rhythm of servants or guards, but something more deliberate, like pieces being set into place. You dress with restraint. Nothing showy, nothing ceremonial. You fold your garments slowly, with the mechanical rhythm of someone preparing for uncertainty, not war. Outside, the corridors seem narrower today, though the architecture hasn't changed. Every turn holds a shadow, just a little too still. You meet no one's gaze. You offer no bows. Today is not a day for manners. You make your way toward the old armory, not to collect weapons but to retrieve what was once hidden behind them. A map etched onto cloth. Too fragile to be trusted, too paper, too telling to be kept in an official scroll. It shows the edges of the province, but more importantly, it shows the roads that do not exist. Any more trails collapsed by time, erased by politics, or intentionally you've followed enough of them to know that what's left off a map often matters more than what's included. You study the cloth for several minutes, fingers resting just above a place called Shirogata Haloan Old, holding your lord once tried to claim, only to relinquish after 3 failed harvests and 1 unsolved disappearance. That was a decade ago. Most people don't even speak its name now. But a faint inked line curves back toward it, drawn by a hand that knew better than to forget. You leave without a word and without permission. The road toward Shirogata is not marked. You take a merchant path first, then divert into forested hills where the trees lean together like gossiping elders. You pass a pair of shrines swallowed by moss, where the stone foxes' faces have been worn smooth by time and rain. A crow watches you from a branch and does not caw. Even nature holds its breath here. Halfway through the climb, you dismount and walk. The path is too narrow now, the incline too sharp. Your boots sink into damp loam. Twigs snap not under you, but somewhere behind. You do not look back. If you are followed, it is by someone who knows better than to be caught. Eventually, the ruins appear not as a destination, but as an interruption. Stone foundations overgrown with ivy, a collapsed torii gate lying like a broken rib across the trail. This is Shirogata Hollow. What's left of it? You don't expect to find anything. But you do. Inside what used to be a storehouse, you uncover it beneath a floorboard. A bundle wrapped in oilcloth, sealed not with a crest, but with twine twisted in a figure-8 loop. A courier's knot. You untie it with steady hands. First, a ledger. Faded, fragile, but intact. Second, a fragment of armor too, small for defense. but engraved with a name you've heard only in whispers. Third, a piece of writing in unsteady brushwork, unsigned but unmistakably deliberate. The truth doesn't die, it just waits for less cowardly hands. You sit down, back against the crumbling wall, and begin to read. The ledger contains records of exchanges, notes on bribes, names of samurai paid to remain silent, letters between rival domains referencing secret treaties. No historian would ever be allowed to verify. It is not a diary, it is not a confession, it is evidence. Halfway through the second page, a pattern emerges. Your lord's name is there. So is the courier who vanished. So are 3 others who are supposedly loyal, still living, still smiling at court. Historians still debate whether samurai information networks in the Sengoku period were tightly organized or merely overlapping webs of mutual suspicion. You now understand the answer is both. Trust was never institutional, it was transactional. The illusion of honor held it all together. You pause to breathe. Your heartbeat has slowed, not from calm, but from focus. You understand what this ledger is. It's a sword disguised as paper. You memorize what you can. You do not take it. You burn it. Every page, one by one. Not because you believe it should be forgotten, but because you know what happens when the wrong eyes find the right truth. You scatter the ashes across the hollow and bury the couriers, not beneath a pile of stones where a plum tree once stood. Before you leave, you kneel just briefly, not in prayer, in acknowledgement. By twilight, you're halfway down the trail when you see him. A figure standing motionless by a pine, wrapped in gray robes, his face obscured. You do not reach for your blade. He makes no move toward you. But in his stance, in his stillness, in the quiet way his presence does not demand attention, you understand. He knows. He is not here to attack you. He is here to witness your choice. You walk past him without breaking stride. No nod, no word, no test. You simply walk. Behind you, he does not follow. By nightfall, you are back in the province. The lights of the estate flicker in the distance like a memory you aren't sure you still believe in. You think of the courier, of the ledger, of the broken Torii gate and the silent forest, of all the secrets that don't fit on paper. You wonder not for the first time whether your silence is complicity or survival, and you realize, perhaps, that it's both. You arrive at the edge of the archive grounds just after dawn, when the mist still clings to the base of the plum trees and the thatch roof glistens with dew. The building before you is smaller than expected, not insignificant, just unbothered by grandeur. A long hall with sliding panels that groan softly when the breeze pushes against them. A watchtower sits behind it, barely taller than the trees, clearly ornamental now. You cross the threshold without ceremony. No guards, no overseers, just dust and the faint scent of dried ink. Inside, the silence is immediate and whole. Not the kind of silence that follows a question, but the kind that has lived in the bones of the walls for decades. You feel it settle around your shoulders like a familiar Howard II, thin for warmth, but too ingrained to remove. He says your name only once, then shows you your table. A low surface near the eastern wall, beneath a set of shelves filled with unmarked boxers. He does not ask what you've brought. He does not offer tea. He gestures to a stack of scrolls already waiting for you and walks away. You sit. You begin. At first, your tasks are mechanical. Categorizing land deeds, verifying tax ledgers, confirming the seal marks of minor officials from 30 years past. It is the kind of work no one watches closely because no one truly believes it matters. But you've learned that patterns don't emerge from noise. They surface in quiet places. By the second day, you notice a rhythm in the errors. Too many ledgers from neighboring provinces record identical grain weights. Too many courier logs are signed by scribes who, according to burial records, had been dead by then. You begin to trace dates against known droughts, map shortages against known uprisings, and slowly you start to see it again, the invisible thread. Not one conspiracy, but a climate. A pressure system of falsified trust. In one scroll, a single note catches your eye. It's written on the reverse side of a merchant license, almost like an afterthought. Just a name, followed by a symbol. A circle within a square. The mark once used by inland intelligence writers during the final decade of the Ashikaga shogunate, the detail most would miss. You do not report it. You copy it onto rice paper and slip it into your sleeve. At midday, the clerk brings you miso soup and pickled burdock. He does not speak, and neither do you. You eat slowly, as if every bite keeps your mind anchored. That night, you sleep lightly, not from discomfort, but from attention. Your dreams are filled with documents, their kanji swimming and rearranging, becoming faces, gates, footprints in the snow. The next day, you're assigned to the sealed records section. Here, the scrolls are bound not just with string, but with wax emblems from long-fallen clans. Some haven't been opened in 60 years. Others are still warm from recent hands, though no dates indicate who last touched them. One scroll, brittle and half-charred, is labeled only for reconciliation. You unroll it slowly. Inside are tallies, not numbers, but names, entire families. Many crossed out, some circled, a few followed by the same courier symbol you found yesterday. You read it 3 times before rolling it back up and returning it to the shelf. You do not take it. You do not forget it. You step outside after the midday shift and walk through the plum trees. Their blossoms have started to fall early this year. Some say it's due to a shift in the river's path last winter. Others claim it's a sign from the fox spirits who favor this grove. A local superstition says that if a blossom falls on your shoulder, you're being watched by someone whose name you've forgotten. One does fall. You don't brush it off. You return to your room and spend the evening transcribing an unrelated merchant dispute. 2 brothers, both claiming ownership of the same ferry dock, had filed conflicting records for 4 years before the magistrate finally ruled the river belonged to neither. It belonged to the tide. The note feels absurd, but it lingers in your mind like a metaphor that hasn't revealed itself yet. Later, you sit beside the oil lamp and spread out your notes. You begin to cross-reference the courier marks, the suspicious tallies, the names in the scorched scroll. You draw lines with charcoal. You circle intersections, and then you pause. One name recurs not often, but consistently. Not high-ranked, not famous. Just a minor official who served as liaison between provinces during the end of the Onin War. A man whose official record ends mid-sentence, as if someone had been called away while writing Etan. Historians still debate whether the disappearance of provincial scribes during peacetime was accidental, or part of a broader tactic to erase inconvenient knowledge before it reached the shogunate. Some argue these disappearances were overstated. Others believe entire generations of bureaucrats were quietly removed. Their records replaced or left unfinished, like a scroll returned to the shelf without its final lines. You sit very still, not because you're afraid, but because you know what comes next. You reach into your sleeve and retrieve the rice paper. You write the official's name, then your own. Then you draw the courier's mark between them. You place the paper inside your sleeve again, but this time with a purpose. Tonight, you will take it to the lantern tower. Not to alert anyone, but to place it in the archives false wall one you found on your 3rd day here, behind the incense cabinet. Inside are papers left by others. Not many, but enough. You will add yours, because someone else added theirs. And this is how stories survive, when they are not allowed to live out loud. You rise before the sun, your room still thick with the scent of burnt oil from last night's lamp. The paper you placed in the hidden wall hasn't been moved. but you no longer expect immediacy. This archive wasn't built for fast things. It's a place where truths wait patiently, even if no one ever comes looking for them. Outside, the plum grove is shedding the last of its blossoms. They fall gently in the gray light, swirling over your path as you walk with deliberate calm. The morning feels brittle, not because something has happened, but because something will. You begin your duties as usual, sorting, verifying, copying. You hold a brush in your hand, but your thoughts are elsewhere. The names, the symbols, the strange recurrence of records left incomplete, or revised, or falsely duplicated. The courier seal that keeps surfacing like a weed through tilled earth. You are not looking for a pattern anymore. You're inside one. You're just trying not to disturb it too suddenly. Midway through the morning, a rider arrives. You hear the hooves first. Steady, clipped, not rushed. The kind of pace someone uses when they want to be noticed but not feared. You do not look up when he enters. He speaks to the elder clerk in low tones, hands over a scroll, then steps back and waits. The clerk, without glancing at you, breaks the seal and reads. It's only after a long pause that he shuffles over. The Lord requires your presence, he says. Not your name, not your title. Just that. You bow. You do not ask why. You do not need to. The return journey is quiet. The same paths, the same hills, the same rivers, but they look different when you're riding towards scrutiny, not away from it. At the estate, a steward greets you at the outer hall. His robe is freshly pressed, but he sweats slightly at the temples. He does not touch you, does not guide you. He simply gestures toward the western chamber. You are left alone. The door slides shut behind you with a gentle finality. Inside, there are two others. Your lord and a man you've never seen before. In plain robes with a crest you don't recognize. He doesn't sit like a servant, but he doesn't act like a noble. You understand instantly. An investigator, summoned from outside the province. His presence here is no accident. They ask no questions. Instead, your lord unfurls a scroll on the table, one of the courier records you didn't take from the archive. But clearly, someone else did. It bears your handwriting, or a perfect imitation of it. They accuse you of leaking state information, of planting false records, of forging seals to create disunity among loyal retainers. You recognize the tactic. Flood the air with enough shadows, and the truth becomes just another shape among them. You do not protest, because to protest is to accept their stage. You kneel in silence. They continue. Their voices are calm, even disappointed. They speak of loyalty, of discipline, of how you were once trusted, how unfortunate this is, how mercy would be shown, if only you confessed. If only you admitted where the original documents are kept. If only you named others. But you say nothing, because you know something they do not. The archive lives on its own now, and if you were a thread in the pattern, you've already been tied off. After an hour of formal accusations, your fate is handed down. You are not to be executed. You are to be reassigned to a post so far inland, so isolated. No message could reach or leave without being noticed. A fortress near a border long forgotten, where snow falls 10 months of the year, and names are spoken only once. They expect you to collapse, but you do not. You bow, thank them for their mercy, and rise. The man in the plain robes watches you carefully. You meet his gaze not with defiance, but with emptiness. That's what unnerves him. Not rebellion, stillness. You are escorted out, not in chains, not in shame, simply escorted. You are not meant to survive this next post. That much is clear, but you know something they do not. You already have. You return to your room and prepare one last time. You take nothing but a brush, a blank scroll, and a small pouch of dried plum blossoms gathered from the archive grove. You do not burn your notes. You do not destroy your maps. You leave them hidden, because someone else will need them later. And someone always looks. As you mount your horse and ride toward the cold borderlands, the sky behind you turns gold, not from fire or omen, but from the ordinary sun rising on an ordinary day. That's the cruel beauty of history. Its sharpest moments often arrive dressed like any other morning. Historians still debate whether samurai exile was a punishment or a preservation. Whether men like you were discarded or planted like seeds in soil where they might one day rise again. You smile slightly because you know the truth, and you're not done planting. You ride 4 hours into the thinning world. The road fades behind you, swallowed by mist and silence. No banners mark your trail. No scouts track your steps. You travel not as a warrior now, but as something quieter, something that doesn't need to be seen. The wind hums low across the fields. Trees lean gently into one another, whispering stories you no longer need to interrupt. Even your own heartbeat feels slower, softer, no longer chasing consequence. The cold comes gradually, first in the fingers, then the neck, then the lungs. But it is not harsh. It is the kind of cold that clears rather than punishes, the kind that makes each breath deliberate, each step meaningful. You pass a ridge where ravens gather on an old post. They do not scatter, they only watch. And so do you. Somewhere ahead, the fortress waits. The post you were meant to fear, the place you were meant to vanish into. But to you, it is simply another silence. And in that silence, the story continues, not aloud, not written, but remembered. You do not need to rush anymore. The ground beneath your horse is steady. The horizon does not threaten, and the past, with all its weight, now rides behind you, not as a shadow, but as a long, calm whisper. You let it settle. You let yourself breathe. You let the road become quiet. And with each mile, the world grows a little softer, a little slower. And, at last, ready for sleep.